Obsession. Who hasn't seen it at this point?
No, 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 don't do that! I thought we were having a nice date!
We are. Sit
Why
down.
does it matter? I thought we were having a nice
We are.
date!
It's the biggest hit of the year, starring Michael Johnston and Inde Navarrete, directed by Curry Barker, a YouTuber turned horror film director. The movie has become some sort of a cultural phenomenon, making over 400 million against its $750,000 budget, putting it in the bracket of greats like The Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, and much more. On this week's episode, we'll be diving into the film Obsession, discussing some of the BTS, the trivia, majorly our thoughts on the film as well, while also deep diving into this new genre of horror that has popped up that we like to call, or we like to term, as night sky horror. This is the Two Please podcast, where we discuss all things pop culture and entertainment. I'm Abin.
I'm Rohit. Let's start the show.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
So, Obsession, probably the biggest movie to have come out this year, right? Which is kind of insane given some of the movies that have released this year. I know I'm recording this maybe a week prior to the Odyssey releasing, and that will probably be the biggest film this year.
Dune 3 is releasing in December.
Yeah, of course. So I forgot about that. Would Dune 3 be bigger than the Odyssey, though?
Yes, I think Nolan's on his way out and Denis Villeneuve is the new Nolan. Anyway, this is a message I dropped you the other day. This is a discussion for a different episode.
Let's see. I'm very intrigued. I watched the Dune 3 trailer about like 4 times yesterday. So I'm also very much in that boat. But this is definitely the biggest surprise of the year. Nobody really saw this coming, especially
Yes.
from a studio like Blumhouse, which is, again, the biggest surprise. A movie like this, one would tend to associate with the likes of A24 and Neon. And Blumhouse, who are known for like low budget horror films, but not exactly, or at least off late, path breaking, or not path breaking, like really good horror films. So for them, this is almost like a return to form of the early Sinister and Insidious era of horror that they had got running back in the early 2010s, right?
Just to sort of caveat your statement, I think the right way to put it is it's the biggest film of the year so far, for sure. And it's probably going to be the biggest breakout film in terms of breakout director, breakout actress, for sure. I'm not sure about Michael Johnston per se. No, no offense against him, but Inde Navarrete is far and away the breakout star of the entire cast there. I think this is going to be looked back as what was that movie with which had Julia Roberts and Mystic Pizza, right? You look back at Julia Roberts' career and you see Mystic Pizza was the movie where uh, it was very obvious that we had a star in our hands, and in hindsight, everyone now is like, oh, it was everyone should have seen that. The next big thing is on our hands. I think Obsession is going to be looked back. I hope so. 10 years from now, when somebody like an Indian Navarrete is a huge star, and you're like, yeah, this is where she first came to the limelight. I think a bunch of people involved with this film, I think, are going to go on to have great careers. I think Zach Cregger, and I'm mentioning Zach Cregger because I feel Curry Barker is of the same ilk, right? You have comedy YouTubers who have. There's a whole YouTube comedy to horror pipeline that is sort of being set up, and Zach Cregger has followed up Barbarian with weapons and seems to be taking the right steps. And I feel even Curry Barker, I'm at the very least very excited about whatever he's going to do next, right? So definitely going to plonk myself in the theater for whatever he does next.
I think he's got another movie, and I forget what it's called, something Ghosts, anything but Ghosts, if I'm not mistaken. And he's also been tapped up for another reimagination of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think they're rebooting that franchise, which I think he'll be leading.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, I think it is like Hollywood. There is a law that every 20 years you reboot the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, making a slightly less worse version of the original as a result.
Yeah, I suppose. I think, as the saying goes, insanity is doing the same thing again and again and hoping for a different result. But anyways, that's we're deviating. Coming back to the film at hand, Obsession. I guess my first impressions are very fresh, given that I watched it just yesterday. Let me not be swayed, since you've had some time elapse since you watched it. Abin, do you want to go first?
I've seen this movie 3 times. Like I'll tell you. So I watched this movie at home once. I watched it twice in the theater, and it became one of these things where I was like, I was very intrigued by it because see, the premise is very simple, right? It's guy stumbles upon a trinket, makes a rather silly wish without really thinking of the consequences, and then just things start to escalate from a 0 to 100 in a matter of like days. You've seen this done before. I think Tari Barker himself talks about being influenced by a Treehouse of Horror episode from The Simpsons, which deals with a monkey's paw. I myself saw similarities between this and the Rick and Morty season 1, episode 6. I think it's called Rick Potion, where Rick makes Morty a potion so that the girl in high school is obsessed with him, and it goes horribly out of hand. I think it's like possibly like if at till up to that point Rick and Morty has not clicked with you, this is the episode where it clicks or it doesn't, because it begins with a silly love portion and ends with like a universe altering decision. When I first heard about this, I was like, okay, well, premise seems fairly normal. Let's see what the treatment of it is like, and that's what really got me. This film, the way it is handled, the way the subject matter is handled, is where its true strength lies. I think this is a phenomenally made movie. I think if you look at even the critical reception as well as the audience reception, specifically on Rotten Tomatoes, it is across the board. People have walked out of it feeling entertained. I don't think it is scary as much as it is unsettling, and I had a exceptional time with it. I think each time I've gone back to watch it, I've gone back to watch with different groups of people. And the really awesome thing is that each time I've watched it with these people, we've almost always ended up pulling something new out of it, which has only further heightened my my appreciation for the film.
I think for the most part, I agree with you, Abin. And in fact, after watching it, I was also reading up things online, seeing what the discourse around the movie was. So before I give my thoughts, I think it behooves us that we give at least a brief synopsis for those of you who haven't watched it yet. So basically, the movie is about this guy called Bear. His name is Baron, but everyone calls him Bear. And this girl he likes called Nikki. Core of the movie is the fact that he likes her, but she does not view him in the same way. And he comes upon this what one wish willow, I think it's what it's called, which is basically like this magical artifact that if you break and make a wish on, that wish comes true. And he wishes for her to be more in love with him than with anybody else in the world. Who could have not, or who could have foreseen the unintended consequences of wording it like that, right? And the rest of the movie is basically those unintended consequences playing out. That's what I'll say at this moment. Obviously, we will get into spoilers, and so so spoiler warning there. But I don't want to give away the plot. We'll obviously get through it as and when we discuss the rest of the movie. That said, now, like I said, I watched the movie and I also went online to see what the discourse was like around it, so that if there were any points of view or takes that I'd missed. The most obvious theme, of course, is the lack of agency that Nikki's character has, right? Which is at the most fundamental level. That's like what you see at the surface. That's the most obvious message. But what I found really interesting is this one take, or this one school of thought which said, is this movie about rape? At the end of the day, sure, rape is acting against somebody's consent. Now, our conception of it is primarily physical, but when you think about it, I'm like, yeah, how is this not rape, right? Because
Yeah,
it may be. I mean, there is a physical angle as well. There is a very clear scene in the film when they're getting intimate, and
I
for a
have to. I
brief
will talk
second,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, there is a brief second where the real Nikki comes out, and you can see it on her face. So it very much is physical rape, but it's also sort of mental or rape of the soul. I don't know what the right phrase is, but that's definitely a valid school of thought, right? There are layers to this film beyond what is on screen, which is pretty insightful for a 21-year-old director to put on the big screen.
I think he's 26.
26,
Parsons,
sorry.
yeah. Parsons, I
Oh
think
yeah,
21. But
Parsons is
okay,
the
go ahead.
21 year
Yeah.
old. We're all in our 30s. They're all kids for us now. So, but yeah, I mean, amazingly insightful and with a lot of depth. Of course, there's that theme, but also the core of what we want to discuss, right? Which is the whole nice guy angle, and a,
What were your initial
in a
thoughts
way,
about the movie, though?
what the fuck, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
basically.
in a nutshell, yeah. You want my
No.
initial thoughts? Since I've seen it just less than 12 hours ago, or whatever, less than
Mm.
16 hours ago. My initial
Mm.
thoughts are, what the fuck? Um, the movie uses jump scares quite effectively. I don't think any horror movie can do away with it entirely, but there aren't too many. It doesn't overuse them. I'd say there are probably three or four, and it's not just the usual jump scare of sudden piano sound or loud this
Mm.
thing. There's also, they've very smartly used lighting. They've very smartly used makeup. I'm sort of creeping into BTS territory here, so
Mm.
I'll hold that thought there. But I think with a mix of performance, creative lighting, sound, music, of course, they've really managed to deliver a very unnerving performance, right? And to your point on, it really messes with your mind. The film, a case could also be made to say it isn't as much horror as much as psychological thriller. Yes, there is a
100%.
supernatural element to it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
100%.
the supernatural element is limited to just that stick, right? That willow stick. The rest of it could, in many ways, play out even without the magical element. So
Mm.
it's more a psychological thriller, I'd say. But yeah, short answer to your question, initial reaction, what the fuck?
100%. I mean, I walked out of this. So I watched this with two separate groups of people. The first group of people, I watched it. I turned to one person on my left, and he was like, "This reminds me of an ex of mine," and I was just like, "Huh?" And the second group of that I went with was a dude that went, "Oh, I want that," and 5 minutes later was, "Oh, I certainly don't want that," that, and then proceeded to have the most horrific time that he's had in a movie theater in recent memory. With regards to this film, I think with the analogy also that you made of it being, I mean, essentially it is a person, a allegory or like a metaphor for rape. I completely agree. And the horrible or the insane aspect of it is, because I watched this movie in India, our censor board is responsible for almost ruining the movie for Indian audiences. And I will get to it in the BTS section. I had to rewatch this movie not only when it came on streaming. I watched it twice the second time around because there were things in my first viewing where I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, what just happened there? And there is clearly like a bit that is missing. Like, what has happened here? And then you found out that 36 seconds of the film have been cut, which more often than not isn't really a big deal. But in a movie like this, these are very pivotal 36 seconds, which kind of play into the aspect of what you are referring to there. But we'll get to it in that section. So, initial thoughts for me, I loved it. I had an amazing time with it. And if you haven't seen it yet and you are here listening to us dissect the spoilers section of this episode, I don't know what's wrong with you. Please stop watching now. Or if this is the kind of person you are, good luck for you.
The
Mm.
the 36 seconds part reminded me of this incident that happened. So this was before I'd watched the film. I was on my office campus. I was walking, like, going into the building, and these two guys were talking next to me, and one of them was saying, so I heard that the Indian censor board has removed some 30 odd seconds from the film, and because so they were discussing whether to watch it in theaters or to torrent it, right, or whatever. That's why in that context, the other guy was like, so I've heard that they've censored these many seconds, and because I'm a cinephile, I can't really, have that experience taken away from me. I'm like, who unironically calls themselves a cinephile? I'm like, who are these guys?
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to be in this conversation. What do you mean? Oh my god! These are the kind of people that annoy the crap out of me. And there was a huge discourse about this online when this whole thing had come out. So when I first watched the movie, I had no idea anything was censored, and only when I got back I realized that it had kind of exploded online, and there was a section that was like, oh, I'm going to watch this movie because this has been cut and it is obviously diluting my experience. See, if you were to ask me, right, I am such a big like promoter of the cinematic experience, like going and watching movies in theaters. Like Rohit will attest to this because I annoy him more than anybody else about this. I'm like, go watch a fucking movie in theaters because I'm going to like out myself here. My social life is very minimal. Rather, I don't do a lot of things. But the one thing I do, which is a big chunk of my social life, is I go watch a lot of movies in my downtime. It is my way of de-stressing and just like unplugging, given how hectic my schedule otherwise is. Almost always, even if the movie sucks ass, I've almost always come out feeling a lot less stressed or a lot less like, annoyed with just how things are. It's kind of my go-to happy place, right? So when I hear shit like this, it just kind of really uh, irks me in a way few things do. But again, that's all besides the point. I want to we'll get into that section in a bit, but I want to quickly jump into any memorable moments that you may have that kind of stood out for you in the film. Like, what is some of the things, having watched it so recently, what's still top of mind?
One is funny, two are funny, and three are horrifying. So I'll get to the funny ones first, right?
Sure.
One is when he gets up and he finds his door is duct taped shut.
Hmm.
I think his initial reaction just made me laugh. I'm like, this guy he's too nonchalant about this, right? He's just like, cool, my door's shut, so nothing I can do about it. I'm going to chill. I'm like, what? You can see Karibakar's comedy origins there, and it's just, and I haven't seen his YouTube content. I'm guessing it's that same sort of deadpan, like, shrug your shoulders sort of humor. I think the horror of that situation he's in hits you before it hits him, right? Like, you realize what that means, right? You've awoken something terrible. So there's that scene. The other funny scene is when he calls that helpline wanting to sort of reverse the wish, and the other person on a helpline is your typical call center guy, where it's like
Mhm.
they want to pretend that they're trying to help you, but they have no intention of solving your problem. They're there to
Actually,
tick the
Cory
box.
Barker.
Yeah, which is actually Curry Barker. Their whole reason to exist is, hey, we tick the boxes, we gave you the responses. Your problem didn't get solved is not my job, right? That's the vibe he gives, which makes you laugh. And then suddenly at the end of the call, when you hear the real Nikki
Hmm.
scream, you're like laughing, and they're like, oh damn, okay, that's one of the jump scares. You're like, damn,
Hmm.
where did that come from, right? Then coming to the straight up horror ones is when he wakes up at night and she's just looking at him, staring. I'm just like, dude, I cannot. What is up with this chick? That one. Then when he comes back, he finds out she's not moved pretty much all day. She's like peed, pooped right there. And I'm just like, somebody has, like, whoever wrote, like Karibaka wrote the film, it's like they took an idea and like extended it to the extremes of expression, right? Just like, hey, she's obsessed to the point where she's not moving. It's like, hey, it's terrible, right? Like, terrible to think of. And of course, the whole spider crawl scene, standing in the shadows and currying back. I'm just like, that one. I'm just like, and that's the BTS bit I wanted to talk about. I might as well make that point now. I think I'd read somewhere that they had done additional makeup on her face
Yes.
to sort of make her face look puffier and misshapen. So it's not just a play of light, but it's also makeup and play of light, which makes that. And they, you only see her eyes, and then she does the
Yes.
crown. Just, bro, what the fuck?
It
No.
scared me because I think at that point I was like, okay, this movie is supernatural because whatever that thing is, it's not human, and obviously the censor board aspect plays into it. I believe it's they kind of have her walking in reverse. So that scene where she does the spider walk, it's walked in reverse and taped back, so it looks the way it does, and
Yeah.
or rather she's walking like quickly forward and it's taped
For
back the way it
forward.
is. So yeah.
Yeah. That, and I read apparently for that scene, they had sped up the frame rate by 10 to
Hmm.
15% to make that walk
Yeah.
also look
Yeah.
faster. Right? So more
Exactly. So
uncanny
it
valley.
feels 100%, right? So I think is there I have several that I'd like to highlight, funny and obviously horrific. And do you have any more that come to mind?
These are the ones that stayed with me freshest in
Hmm.
my mind. There are many. I
Uh,
think the film has a lot of even the scene where Ian is his name, right? Where
yeah,
he hears Bear out and then he's like he breaks the stick. He's like, no, I want $1 million.
$1 billion. I
I'm like,
burst out
what a
laughing.
dick. But I would do the same thing. Like, fuck your problems. I want money.
This movie, as much as it's scary, is also extremely funny in points, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It really breaks that tension, especially towards the second half of the film, where you're like on the edge of your seat. That one sequence where Ian says, "Oh, I just like so nonchalantly just goes, I wish for $1 billion," and it starts raining money in front of them.
From the
Uh,
ceiling.
I was just, and it's just they're both just staring at each other. Like Bear has this like almost like helpless look on his face, and Ian's like, "What the fuck?" And even when, right, he's like Nikki's cornering Bear in the house, and then there is you can hear Ian banging on the door, going like, "Hey, dude, I just got $1 billion. It worked."
Yeah.
And that's the last thing he says. He walks in and he gets shot. I was like, dude, this is like a perfect comedy arc. The most memorable moments for me, obviously, one is her waking up in the middle of the night. Then the restaurant scene, the no 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 no.
There's also trivia around that.
Okay, I'll get to that.
So,
So I mean,
yeah.
you get. I mean, I don't know what the trivia is, so I'm hoping you'll share some deets on it. Then, of course, the I mean, the ones that you shared also are some that I'm a big fan of. What really bothered me was the whole fucking incestuous Hansel and Gretel story poem that she recites in that party, which again we'll get to in the theme section because it very much has a key. It offers a key insight into what she's truly feeling. That and obviously the car scene. Now this sequence I had no context because in the theater, so when Sarah and Bear are sitting in the car, like they're having a conversation, and you know it's coming, right? Like this dumbass has moved out of the house at 2:45 in the morning. This woman is
Yeah.
dead.
This guy is so dumb, dude. But anyway, I mean, he's such a non-character. Cardboard cutout. He.
I'm like, oh, this dude is like, this woman is dead. But how, I don't know. So what happens is she appears at the window, there's a loud bang, and then you see Bear like obviously like flinch, and then you cut back and you see this woman's head just shattered into pieces. Now at this point, the group I went to watch this in the theater with were all convinced that she has supernatural strength, like Nikki has supernatural strength, because we haven't seen anything. We've just seen her. We thought she head-butted her way through the window, and with that force, essentially just exploded this woman's head. And that's how we've convinced ourselves that this is happening. When in the ground, reality is entirely different. Like a brick comes flying in through the window. It's 20, almost 15 seconds of her just bashing her skull in, which is obviously, it's not, you can do it. It's not, she may be slightly more stronger than she was, but it's not superhuman, right? And that's my biggest gripe with the Indian censor board. It altered how I saw the film.
That I don't get it, right? Like, why do you have to censor violence? You clearly haven't done that with the Dhurandhar films, right? Dhurandhar films are needlessly violent.
I watched a guy play football, and we put out a short reel on this on both the YouTube as well
Yeah.
as the Instagram page. Yeah, and it has been generating. If you go on YouTube specifically, it's been generating a fair amount of conversation. So, and I mentioned it there, going about how this is okay. Like Durandar was okay. I saw a guy being hooked to like 1,000 needles being like hooks
Yeah.
being lashed into his skin and him being pulled, and that was fine. But this is where you draw the line at a comedy horror. So I don't understand this weird hypocrisy.
And I would say the right position is both are fine. It's an adult
Yeah.
film, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Give it an A rating. Let people
Hmm.
come in like they're adults. We can handle this, right? We know what's real and what's not. Don't censor anything. I'm not saying censor Dhurandhar. Apply the same standard. It's fine.
Yeah, it's. I don't. I mean, we'll get to this when we're doing up themes because I really have a lot to say on it. And the final thing, I mean, in the movie filled with many memorable scenes, the one more thing that I didn't catch on the first viewing is that when he goes back home after Ian wishes for $1 billion, and Nikki's essentially just like waltzing around the house, and you see Sarah's body in the dining room. And as Nikki turns, you see that she's wearing Sarah's dress. She's drawn tattoos on her to make herself look like Sarah, and she's wearing Sarah's hair. Like so, she has scalped Sarah's head off to
Oh,
make
damn,
herself
I,
look more
I
like
just realized that.
yeah. So it didn't hit me on the first viewing, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Right? Even like the first two times I saw it in theaters, it wasn't the she's like nude. That is again completely cut off. I watched it at home with Vidisha recently, and that's when I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what that weird black thing was." Once again, Indian censor board. But yeah, that just made that whole final sequence all the more insane because it just keeps heightening and heightening and heightening and heightening.
Yeah, the film does not ratchet down at any point. It's just like worse, worse, worse. I thought it just keeps stretching the like the expression of that core idea, right? And quickly to just before we get into the themes, just to cap off, like I mentioned, the BTS point on the trivia bit. So the whole scene in the diner where Nikki's saying no, no, no is apparently Kari Baker's homage to Jordan Peele's Get Out. The scene in
Oh
the
yes,
kitchen
yeah.
where the grandma's soul in the black house help lady, the main, I'm forgetting his name, the main guy is asking her, is everything okay? And she freezes and a tear comes out and she's like, no, everything's fine. Is apparently a direct homage to that scene from Get Out, which apparently was a big influence on Kari Barker while making this film. So
You have people, a lot of directors who, I mean, who will usually say, okay, my influences were The Shining or like The Exorcist, but this is probably the new wave of directors where Barker, he's name dropped this as well as Hereditary. He made every actor in the film go watch Hereditary for their performance, to prep for their performance in this, which is kind of insane because Hereditary came out, what, 8 years ago, and it already has that staying power. And I think also, like with Kane Parsons, he mentioned that a lot of his influences are found footage films. To me, I don't know. I mean, yes, it's been like 1999 wasn't a long, it's almost
true,
20
but I
years.
get what you're saying, right? The classics, as they're called, don't
Mm.
aren't exerting as much influence, and you're finding new sources of influence, and you can see the genres evolving, which is great. That which is why when you said they're making him do the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm like, hey, there's a fresh voice. Don't like drown it in your studio bullshit, please. Let's see where that goes. But anyways,
Mm.
that was the trivia bit I wanted to talk about. Jumping into themes, so the one major theme we've already sort of alluded to, but I really wanted to get into the what we're titling this episode essentially, right? Which
Mm.
is nice guy horror.
See, I wanted to title it as incel horror, but it's not exactly incel horror, as much as people are banding it out as incel horror.
Are nice guys a subset of incels?
They are, but it's
Feel
not like. But incels generally are like have kind of withdrawn from society. My opinion, my understanding is that they're kind of withdrawn from society, have no real social circles, um, and are vengeful in their beliefs.
why do I know so much about this? But let me add more context, at least from my
Sure,
understanding. Right?
of course, yeah, yeah.
I think it's a continuum, not so much a continuum. It's like a journey, right? You have somebody who's an incel, and I think nice. If you were to think of it as an evolution, nice guy is an early stage of incel, right? It's early in their journey where they're a nice guy, where they're probably not getting physical intimacy that they feel that they're entitled to, and their
Mm,
solution to that problem is to try and cosplay as the kind of person they think women are looking for, right? I mean, I'm choosing my words carefully. That's the nice guy phase, right? And because it's not genuine and it's them cosplaying, more often than not, women can see through that bullshit and that doesn't work for them. This is the analogy I want. Yes, I've just struck upon it, right? Think of it as the worst Pokemon evolution. Right? So nice guy is what,
Pikachu.
Charmander or Pikachu?
Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
Charmander.
Yeah.
Charmander is cute, right? Charmander is the cute one, right? The roundy one.
Yes.
I wasn't
Uh,
into Pokemon growing up, so
hmm.
the nice guy is the Charmander, right? From there, when they start going into, so there's this whole movement of men go their own way, right? Which is
Hmm.
when these incels go from being Charmander to Charizard, right? Where they're like being nice didn't work, even though they don't have the sufficient self-awareness to understand that they weren't genuinely being nice. They're like, yeah, looks like even though I'm being a nice person, that doesn't seem to work for me. Women still don't want to have anything to do with me. So now I'm going to go my own way. I don't need them, right? That's the whole MTGOW movement, men go, or
Hmm.
MGTOW, whatever, men go their own way. And then what does Charizard evolve into? There's a third one.
No, Charizard is the final form. So Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard.
Okay, so Charmeleon is your men go their own way. Charizard is when they become these angry, hate-filled, militant incels, right? The ones that get guns and like the campus shootout where this guy targeted
Wow,
women specifically. Yeah, so they are the
God,
Charizard
it's
incels.
so comparing Charizard to school shooters is wow, dude.
So I was trying to look for the right. It's not a journey; it's an evolution. When
Hmm,
evolution, immediately in my mind, Pokemon came. So then that's how I was like,
fair
okay,
enough.
what's a three-stage
Hmm.
Pokemon? So this movie is about Charmander,
Hmm.
the Charmander of nice guy of incels, which is nice guy at the early stage, which is essentially what I was saying. Where and the underlying issue with inceldom is still the same, right? Which is people not realizing that not just when it comes to physical intimacy with women, but generally in life, you're not entitled to jack shit, right? We all get a starter pack in life, which is where we are born, as in what socio-economic standing we're born into, what sort of family we're born into, what parents we get, what siblings we get, and what network our parents have, right? Like of friends, of relatives. That's our starter pack. And whatever innate intelligence or capabilities we're born with. What you do from that is entirely in your hands, right? And sure, you can blame circumstance because universe is random, right? You can do X and still not get the Y you have in mind because things are out of your control influenced it. But that's the game everyone's playing.
From what my understanding with generally with inceldom is that they are taught to follow XYZ. They're like, okay, if you do XYZ, you will get ABC, right?
Yeah, it's
So
almost like it's gamed. I'm like, that's not how life works.
exactly. And then when it doesn't happen in that order, there is almost a sense of I did this. What the fuck? Why do you mean I can't get this? Right?
Yeah,
And I'm not saying this. This is. I mean, that's life in general. There are things we may have worked. We may work hard for the things we do in life, but inevitably, will we get what will the rewards be proportional to the effort? Rarely. So that is something you have to understand with regards to you know with not letting it make you bitter. And similarly with the whole, like, if you coming back to this movie, th- don't think it's a sense of entitlement as much as it is there is like this is something he wants, and it's about control. There is when you do, and mostly when people don't get control over scenarios, either you're like you make peace with the fact that okay, I cannot control the narrative as much as I can, and I will just make do with what I have, and figure out how I can make myself happy in the process. Or it could be in a scenario like this where you go down that dark path and try to see it, like try to not see it, try to like hold on to control wherever possible. So take into context of this movie, right? He very clearly he's not an idiot. He's a coward for sure, but he's definitely not an
yeah.
idiot because there are points in this film where he's very clearly understanding what is happening, but then he is so afraid to give up that control because his whole thing is that so obviously there's the one thing about death. He's afraid. Okay, assume that's a scary thing for him to like consider, but at no point does he try to solve it. The
Yeah.
only time he tries to solve it is when the only other girl who's interested in him dies. Up until that
Yeah.
point, he's not trying to figure ways out. That's when only he goes back to the store, attempts to make another one, goes to Ian, attempts to make a wish. Up to that point, he's fine with the arrangement. Like she's cooked him his cat, it's fine. She's bludgeoned herself in the face. She's taped his door. She's watches him sleep in the night. These are like watching him sleep in the night is fucking creepy as it is. But then when these other things happen in front of people, where you walk home and she's standing in the exact same spot having shat and pissed herself, somewhere you're like, okay, we cannot continue with this. This is not how it works. There's no scene more telling where she's talking to him in her sleep, where she's like, the other Nikki is asleep. I am here. Please kill me. And in that moment, having been through everything, he says, is it so bad being with me? Like
I
after
was just going to come
all
to
of
that
it,
point. Yeah. Which I think is the other point I wanted to make, right? If you think about it, the other core aspect of inceldom, one is obviously not understanding that the universe is random and thinking that you're entitled to something, and you can game your way through life. The other aspect is narcissism. All incels are narcissists. They think
Yeah.
everything's about them. It's about their needs, what they're entitled to. If they had the ability to step out of their mind, or their shoes, and put themselves in the perspective of the other, or the recipient of their creepy advances, for example, it it is not very hard to suss out when you are being a creep, for
Hmm.
the most part. Uh,
Yeah.
I think all of us have unintentionally done something discomforting to women, but like, I know that that happened to me once, and when it was pointed out to me, I was like, "Oh shit, that was not my intention." Right? I had a completely different this thing in mind, not my intention. I was immediately able to put myself in the other person's thing. I was like, "Oh." From their point of view, my offhand remark came off as very disturbing. Cool, shit. Now I'm not like, I need to rectify this. But narcissism sort of prohibits you from doing that, and you feel it's all about, hey, this is what I am doing because this is what I want, but I am not getting it. You see how often the word I is coming there. That's the core
Hmm.
problem.
Like coming back to the bit about you not recognizing your own flags, where you're like, okay, you might have overstepped boundaries. I'm sure it's a trial and error. You learn as you grow up how to speak to people, what to say, what not to say. Um, and even for women specifically, like there are a lot of women who don't know when a narcissist is kind of unloading on them or kind of reeling them in. As a dude, you're able to see a lot of the red flags. And I think there are other movies. So this is just one movie in, like, I'd say an explosion of so-called nice guy horror tropes that have popped up recently. I think another, like Zach Reger mentioned it. Right? Now coming back to Zach Reger, when he made Barbarian, he's like he wrote a movie keeping in mind how many red flags a woman would ignore before realizing that something was wrong. Like, because people tend to ignore a lot of red flags because you're taken aback by either a person's charm or by their looks and so on and so forth. Similarly, in the inverse of that is in this scenario, how many red flags are you going to ignore before you're like, hey, this person in my room is not a real human being, or rather is has lost all sorts of sort of agency, and this is not what a real relationship feels like.
Yeah, and in fact, speaking of real relationships, the other movie that we do want to make a shout out is Companion,
Hmm.
in the vein of Barbarian, right? Which initially, when we were discussing, Abhin was mentioning we do the nice guy horror trifecta. I think Companion also sort of rounds that out, where that's part of the basic conceit of the film itself, right?
So Rohit has dropped a spoiler here. I will not bring it up. But again, there is a nice guy trope involved here. Because I feel like if you haven't seen Companion, you must definitely go watch this. Again, core principle is that there is a nice guy who is trying to control, and he's like
Yes.
in literally control, and that's all you get from us. These three films, the through line, Barbarian, uh, Obsession, as well as Companion, control is the main thing, right? Even if
Yeah.
you look at, and these are all characters that you wouldn't consider as creeps, or like visually
Are
it is not.
threatening. Threatening. They're
Hmm,
not. They're not visually threatening.
exactly. And I think uh, maybe I'm like not as well read or well caught up, but the first time I noticed this was with Promising Young Woman, which isn't a horror movie, but to some definitely is a horror movie. And a lot of the antagonists in the film, like, are guys who you would consider safe.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the nice guy horror trope is trying to tell you, is that this is these guys are the most dangerous because they're wolf in sheep's clothing. They are not who they say they are. And you have
Yeah.
to watch out
Yeah.
for the signs, because you will ultimately get sucked into this, and then it's very hard getting out. But I'm not saying, like, Obsession is obviously the most extreme version of this, given that he makes this unwittingly makes a wish, um, you know, and then gets control over this person. I'm not saying at the start of the film he's a bad person. I think he's negligent. I think his social cues are all over the place. Maybe it's just me, but if a pet of mine had died, I'm not going to like give it up to go meet this girl in a bar who I have a thing for, right? There are like clues to this person's makeup that give you an insight. I won't say an insight per se, but give you a view of what this person
Yeah, at least
is
Nikki
truly
has the
like.
excuse of being under a curse for her not being human. This guy is
Hmm.
fundamentally broken.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, I find it so strange that Hollywood horror is having this moment, and the inverse is now happening in Bollywood, where it's all about hyper masculinity and control, right? We have flipped the other fucking way, like with the likes of your Animals and your Arjun Reddys, and I don't know why we keep bringing these fucking movies up. They don't deserve the time of day, but unfortunately, we've come into an era where insecurity amongst men is the highest it's been, and I think of all people, Imran Khan was on a podcast and he did a real nice talk about it. He said, when insecurity is high amongst men, this hyper masculinity messaging is the one that gets to them the most because they're at the most vulnerable when in fact it is completely wrong. And that is what we as a nation are doing. We're perpetuating the wrong ideas. Okay, insecurity is high given that job employment is bad, futures you don't know.
You also feel, I think, helplessness because, to
Exactly,
be
yeah.
honest, our governance is in the doldrums in the last decade at a national,
Hmm.
central, whatever level you want to talk about it, right? We're a underdeveloped nation masquerading as a developing nation, if you ask me.
Hmm.
So quality of life is shit. You feel unsatisfied, helpless, because there really isn't any avenue for redressal in this country. That's the reality of it. So you're feeling emasculated because these privileges you thought that were guaranteed to you are now, you're facing competition at the workplace because it's now starting to become genuinely meritocratic, and
Hmm.
like now it's like, hey, women can do this job equally. They always could, but now they're being given the opportunity. So now you're feeling threatened, you're feeling helpless, there's no avenue for you to let this out. And all of that, the only outlet that for the average person where they can let all these frustrations out is in cinema, right? Which is where it's sort of wish fulfillment for them. They would like to be that sort of person in real life, right? Where cool shit happens with them, to them, around them, because they're men, and
Hmm.
they have full control of the situation, which in real life is as far from the truth as could be. So while I really hate that genre of movies, I have made my dislike for Sandeep Reddy Vanga very obvious in the past. Abhin has had to censor a bunch of it out. uh, I hate that this sort of content or these sort of movies exist, but I get why it is like it is what it is the outcome of. I don't agree with
Hmm.
it, but I understand it.
For sure, but I think it is essential that we're able to be aware of where this is coming from and not take this on board as the truth, right? Because inherently these characters are all cowards. Like they're all cowards hiding behind this 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 version of themselves that they put up. And you see this in Obsession. You see it like throughout the movie. Bear is the fucking coward. He doesn't. He always chickens out, right? Even towards the end of the movie, where he decides, oh, okay, there's only one way out of this. I'm going to kill myself. And then he pops the pills in. He takes a moment and then decides, he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
No, coward.
It's like paper thin, what do you call it? It's like paper thin
Seriously.
facades. The moment you poke through it, the entire thing just comes crumbling down.
In fact, to the point on this whole hyper masculinity thing, right? I was the other thing that sort of rubbed me the wrong way, even in the new Dhurandhar second part, where this guy, what's his Madhavan's character, Sanya Alya, he when they recruit Ranveer Singh, and he says something like, "Hum mard hain," and he's like, "Hamara kaam hai dard lena," and like putting in the hard work. And why the fuck is pain and hard work being gendered? And are you saying like women don't have hardship? Like once a month they have guaranteed pain. Point one. Second,
Hmm.
try giving birth to a kid and then like open your mouth and spew this bullshit out. I think this dialogue is clearly written by a man who has not spent a second to think about. Again, probably some incel only has written that line.
It's opportunistic, and here's my thing, right? It is, I think we're in a country more than it just propagating culture. It is opportunistic as hell because two films did it. And now everybody wants a piece of that pie, which makes it all the more worse. You fucking cowards, take a stand. Just because it is going to generate and put cash in your pocket, you're like, I don't give a damn about what the impact of this has on like culture in general. I will line my pockets with the amount of money with massive amounts of money that this movie will obviously bring in, and I will go on my merry way. There is a recent movie, I don't know, by the time this comes out, I don't know if it will be in theaters. There's another movie coming in called Toxic, where it is this guy has a gun in this girl's mouth, and it's the whole thing it looks like it's simulating fellatio. I'm just like, why are we doing this? Like, and it's all of these
Yeah.
movies are here to like to provocate. When you are you and this is obviously the thing that happens, right? When you have a film that is substandard to begin with but has generated a significant amount of money, you are going to start getting lesser clones of it over a period of time, because the assumption is that this audiences are watching this, I will remake versions of this. Nowhere, at no point, anybody, at least so far, has somebody said, okay, we're not going to fucking do this. We're just going to like make a version where we flip the narrative. We, but we as a nation, we seem to be just
No, but it's
going
also
away
a
from it.
function of media literacy, right? Like
Hmm.
an obsession
Oh,
in
this movie, and this movie has like divided media literacy. It really puts into perspective who has a semblance of media literacy and who just doesn't have it.
exactly, because it makes sense probably in outside India. In India, you the exact same story. If it was in an Indian film, they'd be like, "Wow, kya kiya hai isne yaar? Like, how did he crack this?"
No, no. And at the end of the movie, when Bear died, they'd have been like, "Oh, what a hero! He sacrificed his life to save the woman."
Yeah. So it's also that I don't think we as a country are ready for these sort of like the average cinema goer is not ready for these sort of narratives. So too bad for us. We have to keep going out looking outside India for this.
And again, like people don't get message; they don't understand when you hear it the first time, right? Like, and Bollywood films have done this where a heroine has said, "No, I'm not interested in you," and the hero has pursued her till the point where she's almost relented out of like out of just pure exhaustion. Even in this movie, like Nikki states her claim very clearly that, hey, I'm not into you. And then when the poem, we were referring to the poem is she's like, I view you as a brother. I've always viewed you as a brother. Yet tonight I will sleep with you regardless. So now that sequence we spoke about, the whole the rape analogy, that's not in the movie in the Indian dub. So that entire sequence where she is dead in the eyes, it's so important that the scene remain in the movie, because it educates your audience that this person is not consenting, because it is like graphic sexual violence. We have just removed it. It wasn't there to titillate, it was there to educate, or it was there to indicate that this character is not here. And it is important that audiences understand in a society where people just don't understand cues or don't understand nuance in general. I think we're so far removed from any sort, like
Yeah.
we're removing, stripping away any sort of nuance when it comes to any sort of public discourse these days. It's essential that it stayed in the film. And I don't know, man. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. I think we pretty much covered what the movie is about. But to
Hmm.
sort of sign things off on a slightly relatively more cheerful note, I don't want to end on a bummer. While I was watching, or in fact, after I watched this film, I was like, if this movie were to be made in India, but different context, what is that situation where, you know, this similar sort of obsessive thought can be applied? And then I realized if this movie were made in India, it would probably be about set of parents. So Bear is basically a couple of parents who have a kid, and Nikki is that kid, and the whole obsession is about getting into IIT, right? So around the age that when does Fitji start now? Fifth standard? Yeah. So
God must be,
probably
yeah.
around 9 or 10 years, the kid is like, "Hey, I kind of like poetry and prose," and they're like, "No." And they find a one wish willow stick, and they're like, "I want our child to be obsessed with getting into IIT." That's the parents' wish, and then over the next 8 years. First of all, sit with the fact that now you have to do IIT coaching for 8 years for a 4 year degree. So from 5th to 12th standard, this kid in the movie is going to kill themselves. And similar to Nikki, there are going to be glimpses or flashes where the real kid comes out and is going to tell his parents, "Hey, I I want to read Ulysses. Why are you making me study for this?
The kid starts
But
beating itself with the lathe machine on the lathe machine.
yes, with the lathe machine, with like bang bang, or like diodes, like eating diodes. Like I don't
No,
want to
that's
do anything.
why I do it.
And parents are like, is it really that bad to get into IIT? Would you rather kill
Maybe.
yourself? Is IIT that bad? And in the Indian version of the film, the movie would end with the kid actually cracking JE and gaslighting themselves into thinking, yes, this is what I wanted.
And then you have the song playing in the background with the kid crying, but you don't know if they're crying out of happiness or sadness.
It'll be uplifting music, and the parents will be like, see, we were right all along, because that's what works in India.
That is true horror. Okay, now just to quickly wrap this up, I think towards the end, we're just about coming up to the end. Now, in comparison to the other two of the nice guy horror films that we've mentioned, so let's Barbarian and Companion. So, Barbarian, just to give our viewers an understanding, those who haven't seen it, is about this girl who ends up double booking an Airbnb one night somewhere in like a very dilapidated area of Detroit, and there's a guy already there, and she chooses to stay the night, and things start to like really take a turn for the worse. That is the first, and the second is Companion, where a group of friends go into the Finger Lakes for a holiday, for a vacation, one evening. Finger Lakes, I don't know, they go someplace in the US, and things again turn out to be really insane because one of them isn't, or rather, a couple of them aren't who they say they really are, and things just a few things happen and things start to escalate. Now, out of these three, which would you consider to be the best film of the lot?
I don't want to be influenced by recency bias. Obsession, Barbarian, Companion. Because Companion, I mean, I would say best to worst, right? The reason I'm saying Companion is probably the weakest of the three is because the nice guy angle is there, but there are other elements at play. Like there's a whole crime angle too. So it's not the core focus of the film, right? Barbarian, because of the sudden tonal shift, which works great for the film, but I'm saying purely from the perspective of the question you asked, is sort of to its detriment. You can see Zach Cregger probably having too much fun making that film, right? It's to the extent that he sort of gets distracted from the larger point he's trying to make. Obsession is on point about what it wants to say. It's not subtle. It's probably for the best idea.
I think it is definitely a mass market, like a mass market movie. I somehow enjoyed Barbarian, so I think it would probably be Barbarian Obsession and this for me. I think Barbarian, given, and I'm talking about it from a movie perspective. I think Barbarian, the first 45, 50 minutes of Barbarian till the cut to black is the most I have sat in a movie and gone, what the fuck are you doing? Every couple of minutes. Like Obsession is a close second. From choices to like what happens in that home to whatever, I'm just like, what are you doing? And then obviously you have the cut, and then you have the second half of the movie. I don't want to like ruin it because it was ruined for me because I didn't know this person was in the movie. But this flip that happens and a new character is introduced, and he is initially you think a really vulnerable dude, and then it just again nice guy, like nice guy horror.
Yeah.
It becomes like whatever is happening in the movie, he's somehow the worst thing to come out of it. With regards to Obsession, we've spent the last hour just dissecting what makes it so good, what makes it so relevant today, and Companion, I think, is like from the go, you're like something's off. This is not right. Something's off, and none of these movies are bad movies. But I would just say from an impact perspective, I think Barbarian has that hold on me, and Obsession is a very much a close second, with Companion followed behind a third.
Yeah, I think again, nothing against Companion. It's a great film, but it's high, it's stiff competition, which is why it's probably
Okay, let's wrap this up. Anything you want to add before we close out?
no. I pretty much I'm happy I got in my Pokemon and IIT analogies.
But yeah, okay. Let's quickly wrapping this up. So if you made it to the end of the episode, I would love to know your thoughts on the mini obsession. Did you like it? Was it scary for you? Was it not scary for you? A lot of people complained that it wasn't scary. I would love to know what you thought about it, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. And just leave your thoughts in the comments or like drop us a message on Instagram and we'll share it on our page. That's us signing off. If you liked the episode, please don't forget to leave us a like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us. We'll catch you on the next one. We haven't decided what that is, but it'll be fun. So we'll keep you posted and stay tuned for more. Take care.
Bye-bye.